So, you see Peter at dinner with Gwen and her family, and, you know, Peter being the genius that he is that gave himself away earlier in the film, once again, almost gives himself away. Like, you know, somehow the topic of Spider-Man comes up, and he literally, no joke, almost gives himself away right in front of everybody. And then later steps outside with Gwen and proceeds to give himself away to Gwen. You're just so good at blending in around Gwen. Good job, Peter. Peter, like, Gwen's dad has to go off because, like, the lizard's attacking, because, of course, Kurt Connors, things all fall apart, becomes the lizard and starts going on an angry rampage. You know, to be fair, he is quite angry because he was going to get cut off and had to inject himself with an experiment that he didn't know was going to work or not. So, Peter then gets his costume and goes off to fight the lizard. The lizard is now attacking people in cars on a bridge looking for this guy. You know, he's not really attacking people, but he's doing it in a very destructive manner. Everyone's running and panicking, and he is kind of throwing cars off the bridge. But Spider-Man shows up, saving the cars that have been thrown off the bridge, and he fights the lizard, and the lizard loses his arm. He's like, oh no, I'm changing back because of formula dosage. And so he runs off, and Spider-Man is going to chase him, but then has to go save a kid. Because, like, there's a kid stuck in a car. So Spider-Man goes down for the kid, and in a really cool way, actually, does actually save the kid. He's like, hey, I know you're scared, but put my mask on. It will make you strong. And in a really cool cinematic way, Spider-Man is able to save the kid. However, the car bursting into flames to jump the stakes up was a little Hollywood and a little stupid. But the fact that, like, when he was holding on to the car, it was the bumper that was falling off, that was cool. It's like, you know, if they had kept out the Hollywood crap with the fire, and it was just like the car's bumper falling off that Peter was trying to hold on to, like, and then he had to save the kid, that would have made a much cooler scene. But regardless, to the movie's credit, that scene was really cool. So, after his saving of the kid and his thrilling fight with the lizard, what does Peter do? He goes and sits in his room doing the classic superhero, looking at his mask going, what do I really mean? So then we cut to Connors waking up in the sewer, and he follows some lizards to find the perfect place to set up his evil laboratory. Because, you know, the sewers is just the perfect spot for science. And also, where did he get the blanket? I mean, I'm not complaining because that'd be really gross if he didn't have it, but still, where did he get that? He was just some rampaging lizard monster like 5 minutes ago. Did he grab it off someone's bed before he went in? Do you think some kid somewhere is traumatized because some monster's claw reached through the window and stole his blanket? That'd actually be pretty funny. So the next morning, Captain Stacy is on TV making an official statement about what had happened on the bridge. And he blames Spider-Man. Dun dun dun! Everyone saw that one coming because guess what? Everyone, you know, who was on the bridge and saw a giant lizard attacking is, you know, they were all high or something. No one can listen to them, and Spider-Man's the good guy here. We all knew this was coming. There had to be some conflict where the police were hating Spider-Man for no reason, but, you know. So, the next scene at school, you think Peter talking with Gwen is going to be like, oh, why is your dad doing this? I wasn't, But no, they're sitting there examining the spider that bit him and being like, oh, this is the spider that bit you. It's amazing. And he's just in there like, yeah, it is. I'm just awesome like that, you know? I didn't die from radioactive poison. Anyway, the point being, it's like, don't you think you have something better to talk about? Yeah, the spider is an important part of the story and portrays exposition well. But it's like, at the same time, you have a story to tell that you set up in the last scene where Captain Stacy's like, Spider-Man's a criminal. We're gonna hunt him down. We have an arrest warrant for him. Blah, blah, blah. We're gonna catch him. And it's like, what? Did none of that matter because you're not Spider-Man right now? What's going on, man? You were pretty upset in the kitchen when you found out, and you kind of stormed out of there, but now you're fine because you're around a hot girl. So they kiss, and somehow, like, you know, spider sense, Peter catches a football and throws it. And it then hits a goalpost and bends the goalpost. That's not possible. I don't care how strong you are. That ball hitting the goalpost that has nothing grounding it up here cannot cause it to bend like it did. It's like, yeah, you might like maybe dent it if the ball was like super dense, but like even so, that's not physically possible. You cannot like bend something in the way you did. And everyone in the field is like looking around like, whoa, what happened? Who did that? Oh, there's two people sitting up in the stands, and Parker already broke the blackboard of the ball hoop thing. Nah, it can't be them. Who did that? It's just kind of like ridiculous. You're like, wait, nobody noticed? When they clearly noticed, but nobody saw them sitting up there and thought, well, Parker's been lifting weights over there. That's kind of amusing to me. Peter then goes to see Dr. Kurt Connors to be like, hey, I want to figure out more about this lizard guy. And Curtis Connors is an expert in lizards, he must know. And upon arriving there, he realizes that Connors is completely insane. Like, you know, so they're leaving, but as they're leaving, Peter notices one of the test rats and sees that it's like this weird lizard creature, and is like, oh no, that means Dr. Connors is the lizard. And it's like, you're thinking to yourself, yeah, isn't that obvious when you first met him that he's gonna go crazy eventually? He's unstable, he wants his arm back, it's simple as that. So Peter then goes and tries to tell Captain Stacy, he's like, hey, I know what attacked the people on the bridge. It's this guy, Kurt Connors. He's turned himself into like a giant lizard. And that sounds crazy. And he even acknowledged it. He's like, I'm sorry, I sound like I'm crazy, right? And he's like, so Captain Stacy's like, all right, escort Mr. Parker back to school. But then, because this movie does treat us well, and he goes into one of his like other officers and he's like, hey, I want you to get me everything you know about Curtis Connors. Because Peter was saying things that he knew Curtis Connors was an expert in. So he's like, hey, I'll look into it a bit. You know, it sounds crazy, but you never know. There's a guy out there who can, like, who's a spider. You know? I can, like, look into anything. But Peter, not knowing that he's looking into it, decides to also go into it himself. So he goes into the sewer and sets up a pretty like cool reverberation thing, like to set out in all directions of the sewer in that one part for some reason, to see if he can catch the lizard. So Peter's sitting there waiting for the lizard to show up, and the lizard does, and they have a quick fight, and you can see that the lizard is way more powerful than Spider-Man, because, you know, Peter may have the proportional strength of a spider, but the lizard has the proportional strength of a lizard. Any kind of lizard. And lizards are very strong compared to spiders. That's why most of them are eaten by lizards. But, so the lizard scratches huge, like, claw marks into Peter, and Peter only gets away because the plot needs him to be alive. And then he shows up at Gwen's house, and we get more of that lovely, unaudible whispering that we had in the previous scene. Where it's like, I mean, yes, I understand they're talking in whispers because they don't want, like, anyone to hear them. But this is a movie. You have to boost the audio enough where people can watch this scene and movie without subtitles and still understand what they're saying. I mean, usually you can hear Gwen kind of mumble something, but every single time Peter talks in that scene, you cannot hear him. In fact, if you didn't have subtitles on, you wouldn't even know he said anything. And that's my one major problem with the film. Yes, it gets whispering good, but it's so good you can't hear it as an audience member. It's like, what are you doing? I can't hear what they're doing. How am I supposed to be invested in the story at this point if I don't know what's happening? And then, like, especially because right after that, they just go off and like swing through the city. It's like, wait, you had huge wounds in your chest. You were like barely able to hear you, and now you're just swinging off for no reason? I don't know. Personally, I think that is just one of the most annoying scenes of the movie, just because you can't hear what's going on, and then they're just like, woohoo, look at us, we're whimsical again. And it's like, what? Dude, you had huge scratch marks in your chest that Gwen like rubbed the sponge on for like 2 minutes. How are you good? How, like when you went into her room, you could barely even stand. And now you're fine. What the heck, dude? Was that a magic sponge? There has to be some reason for what's happening. Because even with the subtitles on, you understand what's happening in the scene. You still don't understand how he's able to just freely swing off without any like pain or anything. And it's like, oh, power of boners has fixed my body. I'm now able to, you know, be a superhero again. That's what I'm taking away from the scene. Well, anyway, then right after that we get a scene basically stolen from the original Spider-Man movies, where it's Dr. Kirk Connors sitting in the sewer, golluming to himself. He's sitting there and he's like, oh, we should help humanity, but I don't want to hurt anyone. Oh, but you have to, because it's for the greater good. No! It's like, dude, seriously? Is every Spider-Man villain have to be just, like, mentally crazy? That they can't just be some regular guy who's like, hey, I just feel like doing bad stuff because that's what makes me happy. They all have to have some kind of mental disability so you feel bad for them as the audience member. The Lizard had already learned that Peter was Spider-Man because he had found Spider-Man's camera, and it was like, it said Peter Parker on the back, classic, like, oh no, Peter Parker is Spider-Man. And then you're thinking to yourself, well, you can't really jump to conclusions to yourself, because you had a magic blanket that appeared out of nowhere, and you probably stole that from somebody. How do you know he didn't just steal this kid's camera? You don't know. But because you're a scientist, and he's a scientist, and he kind of gave himself away earlier, you're like, he is Spider-Man. So you go off, and you start attacking him in the middle of school. And Peter, being who he is, sees the Lizard, like, you know, rampaging down the hall. And instead of ducking into the bathroom and changing into Spider-Man and going out and fighting the Lizard, no, he tells everyone to get out and then engages the Lizard wearing his normal school clothes. That's cool. It's a cool scene and all. It's like, oh yeah, you go, Peter. But it's like, if you really sit and think about it, you're like, isn't he, like, in school? Aren't there, like, security cameras in the hallway? Seeing him shooting his webs and being like, you know, kicking ass against this giant lizard. It's like, that's cool and all, but dude, your secret identity's gone. So, regardless, they fight, and it's a very well put together fight scene, and it has very good action. It's just all around really good, and it has the best Stan Lee cameo put together so far. However, police sirens are going off. Dr. Connors feels himself kind of reverting back, so he goes off back into the sewer. Spider-Man decides to follow him down there and gets a call from Gwen, because, you know, the sewer is just the best place for science and cell phone signals. So he has his cell phone and he's like, hey, what are you doing? And she's just like, oh, you know, I'm okay. He's like, good, I need you to go to Oscorp and make the anti-venom so that we can, like, fix him. And she's like, awesome, I can go do that because I'm Dr. Connors' like assistant. Convenience. So Peter follows the trail and he finds Dr. Connors' underground lair. By playing the evil exposition program, he instantly learns all about Dr. Connors' plan, and he's just like, oh no, I've sent Gwen to her doom, blah blah blah, and has to go off and save her. To be fair to the movie, this scene was much better explained in a deleted scene. The deleted scene shows what happens when he got there, because Connors was still there, and Connors kind of explained it in a way where you knew that's where he was going, to kind of turn everyone into lizards and stuff like that. He's like, I admire you, Peter. You are pretty perfect yourself. Don't you want to share this with everyone else? And then the evil M. Night Shyamalan doppelganger guy shows up and is like, tries to kill Connors, and he's like it shows that like he's still alive, because like if you notice, he hasn't been in the movie since like he disappeared on the bridge, and it's like, that's pretty cool, and it explains what happens to him, because then Connors, who had already injected himself with another dosage of the lizard formula, becomes the lizard, kills that guy, knocks Peter out for a bit, and then goes off on his evil plan. Because if you notice, it's the middle of the day when Peter goes into the sewers, and by the time he is going to Oscorp with Gwen and all them, it's nighttime. So it's like, whoa, what happened? Did it really take you 6 hours to like walk through the sewer and find this evil lair? But no, it is like a much cooler scene, but because of time it had to be shortened, and it's not as good. So Peter's just watched the exposition computer of evil, and he's like, alright, I gotta go save everyone now. And outside you see, like in another scene, you see the lizard being attacked by police officers, because he's stealing the things that turn people into lizards from like some random building. It looks like a bank, but it's not. I think it's just like an Oscorp storage facility, something like that. So the police are shooting at him, and then the lizard ends up infecting them and getting away. However, Peter has successfully called Gwen again and is like, hey, the lizard's on his way, you gotta get out of there. So Gwen goes and sets off the evacuation, but she herself stays, because it's like, the antidote is still cooking or whatever, and so she's like, oh, I gotta stay and like wait for it. You see the police, they were chasing the lizard, but then, oh no, Spider-Man's over there, we gotta go get him, because guess what? He's evil, and that lizard who's infected a lot of guys. We'll get him later, but no, that's Spider-Man, we gotta go get him now. So they go and like they do a little manhunt of Spider-Man, they're chasing him, and in a pretty cool scene actually, like they shoot off like a projectile taser round and it hits Spider-Man, he gets like, and he falls, and the police like surround him, he's handcuffed, they take off his mask, and in a really cool scene, Spider-Man, like Peter, like breaks out of the handcuffs because of his strength, goes around and takes everybody down, and then the only person who sees him without his mask on, besides the people sitting in the helicopter, is Captain Stacy. And he's like, you gotta let me go, your daughter's in danger, I have to save her and everyone else from the lizard. So he puts on his mask and he is leaving, but before he can get away, one of Captain Stacy's men shoots him in the leg. Because you know, before, when a police officer is shooting you with a pistol from this far away, you can dodge that no problem. But as soon as some guy has a pistol from, like, 50 feet away, that's a problem. Your Spider-Sense, right over the head. And, he's like trying to get there, but because of his leg injury, he finds it very difficult. Back at Oscorp, the antidote only has like 2 minutes or so left to cook, and Gwen's sitting there waiting with it, and then she can hear the lizard breaking in, so she sets off the fire alarm, and it seals her in, and she goes and hides somewhere with the dispersal device that the lizard's looking for. Lizard breaks in, no problem, is looking around, sees the dispersal device is gone, sniffs around, smells that a human has been in there, finds Gwen, grabs the device. Like, all this is happening, Gwen's like using an aerosol can and a lighter and is like trying to burn him. But he doesn't even care, he just grabs the device and leaves. And so she's just like, and then as soon as she steps out, you hear the exposition female computer say, antidote complete. And it's just like, oh, how unfortunate would it have been if Kurt Connors had been around when that had went off, And he's just like, antidote, smashes it on the floor. I don't need that, and runs off. And he'd just be like, that's bad. Now we don't have any defense against him. So we get back to Spider-Man, who's running, trying to get to Oscorp, to save Gwen, stop the lizard from dispersing the venom all over the city. But his leg injury is really slowing him down. And, the news is following him because he's more important than the lizard attacking Oscorp. And they're like, oh no, Spider-Man looks hurt. And the dad of the kid he had saved earlier on the bridge is sitting there watching Spider-Man on TV, and he's like, hey, I happen to be a crane operator because of convenience. I'm going to go and get other crane operators. We're all going to line up the cranes so that Spider-Man can swing from crane to crane. And, it's a really cool scene, but if you think about it, how lucky is Spider-Man that some guy who happened to like him worked for the crane company at that time? Because, the outcome of the movie would really have been different if Spider-Man wasn't able to get there and, all of New York was turned into lizard people. So Gwen runs outside and runs into her father, and her father tells her in a discreet way, I know who Spider-Man is, he's your boyfriend, blah, blah, blah. And Gwen's like, I have to get this antidote to him. And he's just like, no, I do. And so he goes off with the antidote. So the lizard has primed his device on the top of Oscorp. And Spider-Man finally shows up, and they start to have a really cool fight to the movie's credit. However, once again, Spider-Man is proven to not be as strong as the lizard. And just when it seems like Spider-Man is defeated, Captain Stacy shows up and saves him. So, by working together, Captain Stacy and Spider-Man successfully freeze the lizard using some weird, freezing gas that came out of, the tubes that just happened to be on the roof, because convenience, typical stuff. And Spider-Man goes up and switches out the canister so that it's the cure that gets dispersed rather than the lizard potion. The lizard had broken free from being frozen and stabbed Captain Stacy, and then goes to stop Spider-Man, but decides, he's like, hey, I won, it's already dispersing, not knowing that Spider-Man had switched the canisters. So the cure disperses, and then the freezing potion thing had hit the side of the tower, and the tower was unstable and started to collapse, throwing Spider-Man off the building. Seeing that his plan had failed, the lizard was now a good guy again, being redeemable, so he goes and actually saves Spider-Man from crashing. Why Spider-Man when when the lizard is clearly struggling to keep him up with an arm that's disintegrating? I don't know why Spider-Man wouldn't just, cling on the wall and be like, haha, I'm Spider-Man, I can stick to walls. And that piece of the tower, as a side note, actually is just allowed to plummet straight to the ground. Spider-Man doesn't even try to stop it from plummeting straight to the ground below. To be fair, that portion of the city had been evacuated, but still, it's just kind of funny that Spider-Man just kind of let this thing plummet to the ground and, destroy tons of cars and property. So, after remembering that Captain Stacy had been stabbed by the lizard, Spider-Man runs over and, of course, being stabbed straight through the chest with giant claws, the Captain is dying. The Captain, in his dying words, makes Spider-Man promise to leave Gwen alone, because it's like, hey, I don't want Gwen getting caught in all this crap. As you can see in Amazing Spider-Man 2, he clearly knows what he's talking about. Spider-Man then proceeds to say, I will leave her alone, and he does for a week or so, as she's dealing with the loss of her father all by herself, being a great guy that Peter is. And then Peter then proceeds at the end to break his promise to Captain Stacy, and he starts dating Gwen again. So, dying man's last words, they're good for about a week. In conclusion, this movie, despite its faults, is still one of my all-time favorites. And why wouldn't it be? It has great characters, even if you can't always hear them. It has a great story. There are some plot holes, but those can mostly be fixed by the deleted scenes. And it just is all around fun, So whether you're a comic book fan or just a regular moviegoer, this movie is definitely worth a watch because it is a great film and you will definitely enjoy yourself. Alright guys, thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you. It's like, dude. Then he sits on his bed and can. Jasmine, shut up. My cat.